And welcome to another video. Today it's very simple. I'm going to be making a card and we're going to be hopping along with Clair stamps. They have the It's the Season event going on over on their blog. I'll leave that link down in the description box so you can go see what the rest of the design team has created for this event. Now I'm going to be using this Holiday Lights stamp set. This is one of their background stamp sets. I love these backgrounds. They're so easy to just pull out very quickly and make a quick card. I'm going to be using this to do some heat stamping on vellum. These are clear background stamps, so all I do is take off that protective sheet. I leave it on the backing sheet most of the time. You can use these with your stamping positioners if you want to, but I find it just as easy to do it this way unless I'm doing a special technique where I need to use my stamp positioner. I'm going to go ahead and ink up that stamp with some Versamark ink. This is just a clear sticky ink. And then I'll take my vellum, and I went ahead and prepped this with my embossing bag. I'm going to place that vellum right on top of the stamp. The great thing about vellum, you can see straight through it, but it's also a little bit flimsier of a paper. So I'm going to place a piece of heavyweight cardstock on top of that, and I'll use my brayer to press this down on top of that stamp. You want to make sure you just press the vellum onto this raised portion of the stamp and not into the little crevices that are open. Because the Versamark ink pad is very soft and foamy and spongy, it can get into those open spaces. So make sure you use a brayer or an acrylic block to help press that just on the portions that are raised. Now it's bound that you're going to get a few spots in your vellum where the embossing just wants to stick where it's not supposed to. I'm using a silver embossing powder today, and you can see exactly where it's sticking, that maybe I smushed it down into those open areas, or I live in a dry climate, it could just be static. So I like to take a dry paintbrush and just very quickly run my brush over it and then tap it off into that coffee filter. That coffee filter is great to do your embossing over. It catches all the stray powders. You can funnel it right back in. They're very cheap, so you can just crumple it up and throw it away. If you have any leftover glitter bits or little pieces, that way you don't cross-contaminate your embossing powders, which can happen after quite a few uses. I've contaminated my clear embossing powder with white embossing powder actually. So this keeps that from happening. Now with heat setting on vellum, you want to make sure your heat gun's hot and let it heat up for about 30 seconds and then just move it around quickly. You do not want to overheat this on vellum. It can happen in an instant and you can burn your paper, and that stinks. Like literally it stinks. So you just want to make sure that you're careful moving it around constantly with your vellum. Now I want to cut this out and make this into a background. I'm using a rectangle die. As always, all supplies are going to be listed and linked down in the description box. So if you have any questions about specific die sets that I'm using, specific colors, anything like that, you can find all that information down below in the description box in all of my videos. I did heat emboss on this beforehand though, so I want to go ahead and make sure that I put a piece of computer paper over that as I run it through my embossing or my die cutting machine. That way it doesn't pick up any of those cut lines that are on my top cutting plate or get any funky little lines in the embossing. So just by adding that little bit of computer paper on top, you're going to save yourself a lot of hassle. And I did do my die cutting second because I didn't want to have to line up my die cut perfectly on my background. I just wanted to be able to throw that paper on top and then die cut and position everything just perfectly that way. Now I used those same dies, and it was a die set, so I used the same die and then one smaller to go ahead and create this frame from white cardstock. This is going to allow me to add adhesive onto my vellum and not show through. Plus it just adds a little bit more interest. To line this up easily, I'm going to place both pieces into my MISTI and just line them up in the corner. That's a great way, if you have frames like this, to get them lined up properly. Use your stamp positioner. It helps so much. Now, whenever I made that frame, I had a little rectangular center piece of white cardstock, so I kept that. I'm going to use it for a few different things. First, I'm going to go ahead and take this stamp. This is the snowman stamp from the Snowy Greeting stamp set from Clair. This is newer as well. I'm going to go ahead and ink that up with some VersaFine Clair ink. And then, excuse my head, I'm going to take those little snowballs and attach it to the snowman. So there I've got one little piece that I'll fussy cut out later. But first, I went ahead and cut that just away from the rest of my cardstock because I'm going to take that edge on the bottom and use this hillside border die. You can get these from so many different companies. This one has stitching on one side. You can flip it over and use the other side and use it plain. I went ahead and used the plain side, did some quick die cutting with that, and there I've got my hillside that will fit into my frame, and I didn't have to use any extra cardstock. So for my snowman, I'm going to color him in very, very quickly with my alcohol markers. I'm using the Dick Blick Studio brush markers. You could use whatever coloring medium you wanted to with this. I use VersaFine Clair ink. I did give it a quick heat set before I started coloring, but the VersaFine Clair inks works with so many different coloring mediums. You don't really need to think about what coloring medium you're going to use with it before you stamp with it. But I'm going to go ahead and color this in very quickly. I colored in his little scarf with some red. His top hat I colored in black, colored in that holly with the little red and green, added that yellow ribbon, I don't know what it would be, on his top hat. And then I just did a very, very, very light coloring of blue, blending out with a little bit of gray on the sides of him to give him that round look, and also underneath him and on the little snowballs. Now for the coloring on these lights, I'm going to flip my vellum piece over and color on the back side of the vellum with my alcohol markers. For this, you do want to use some type of alcohol ink to color these in. You could use alcohol inks. I'm using my alcohol markers because that's what I have, and these don't give me a headache. So that's what I'm going to use today. Now I went ahead and added some double-sided adhesive. This is dimensional adhesive to that frame. Made sure it was where the white frame was so it didn't show through the vellum. And then I'll go ahead and pop that right on top of an A2 top folding card base that I'm using horizontally. I added some double-sided adhesive to the back of that little hill that I die cut, and I'll add that right inside the frame. It fits like a puzzle piece because I used the leftover piece. Now I'm going to go ahead and quickly fussy cut out my little snowman and the snowballs right next to him. I'm keeping these with a white border, and I'm keeping it one piece. Now I forgot to add my sentiment. You'll want to do this beforehand if you are remaking this card. I grabbed the Let It Snow from the Snowy Greetings stamp set and stamped that on the right side of that hill border. That is going to work okay for me because I'm using that VersaFine Clair ink, but I would not suggest stamping like that, especially with dimensional adhesive. Do it beforehand. I added dimensional adhesive to the little snowman. I'm going to pop him up on the left hand side on that little hill that I created. And that's it for the front of the card right now. I will come back in, but I want to finish the inside first. Here's a few pictures of that little snowman just put on the card, and also that frame. You can see that little hill fits like a puzzle piece. Now the inside of the card I wanted to finish before I put on my last little touches on the outside because they need some dry time. So I grabbed the Walking in a Winter Wonderland sentiment from that same Snowy Greetings and also a few of the little snowflakes. I stamped the sentiment in some black VersaFine, grabbed a green and a red dye ink, and I'm going to stamp a few of the little snowflakes in those colors just around that sentiment. I just stamped 3 of them. There are many, many, many more to choose from, so you will not run out of snowflakes to use from this stamp set. It is packed full of them, and they're beautiful. Now, back to the front, I wanted to go ahead and add some Nuvo drops. These are the clear looking ones. I'll leave them linked down below. I'm not sure the exact name, but I grabbed the red and green ones, and these aren't so colorful that they're going to dull the color behind it. They just add a little pop of shine to it. I put green over the green ones. I put red over the red ones. If you don't have these colors, use glossy accents or use the crystal clear like dewdrop ones. That's going to add the same amount of shine. You're just not going to get the color that I'm getting here, but it'll give you the same look pretty much. They might just be a little bit more dull. So I put those on, let them dry, and there's a closer look at what those look like. You get that dimension, you get that color, and it just adds a little bit more to that background. That completely finishes the card off. I do want to say that I am so glad that I waited to finish that outside. If you're going to decorate the inside, do that before you put anything on the outside that needs that dry time. It's going to save you so much time in the long run. One final look at this finished card, and that is going to do it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There are going to be links on the left side of your screen you can click on. You can subscribe to my channel over there as well. You can find all of my social media links down below in the description box. Happy crafting, everyone.